The first thing we do when teaching the deadlift is we teach our clients to hinge their hips first. Without that proper hip hinge, they're not going to be able to deadlift properly to get into position, and they're going to have some low back pain when they start. So what we want to do is master that movement first. So what we do is we use a PVC pipe, we put it right behind their back, one hand goes over the top, one hand comes underneath, and what we want to do is we want to make sure that the head, shoulders, and tailbone are all touching the PVC pipe. After that, I'm going to ask Kristen to bend her knees slightly and then start to push her hips back. And notice how she maintains a proper neutral spine as she hinges. Go ahead and keep going, down and then back up. So the whole time she's not flexing here at her lumbar spine and she's staying in proper alignment. The next step in our progression is the Romanian deadlift. Some people call it a stiff-legged deadlift. It's not really correct. The knees are going to be a little bit soft. But I'm going to have Kristen go ahead and grab the bar. She's going to go thumb width from where the smooth meets the rough part of the bar, what's called clean grip. She's going to have a slight bend of her knees, and we're going to maintain that neutral spine, a slight arch in the lumbar spine, and then she's going to work on pushing her hips backward till the bar slides just below the knees, and then squeeze her glutes, and then staying up tall. One common mistake that people make with this is they let the bar travel out too far. What that does is that takes the pressure off of the hamstrings and glutes and puts too much on the low back. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that the bar slides down the thighs, keeping the spine neutral all the way down below the knees, sitting the hips back. Okay? If you do this right, you should feel a slight stretch in your hamstrings towards the bottom. And that's the Romanian deadlift. All right, the next step in our progression is going to be the sumo rack pull. So what I'm going to have Kristen do is go ahead and widen your feet to sumo stance. Sumo stance is just outside of the shoulders. From there, her toes are going to point out slightly. And then what she's going to do is go ahead and roll the bar into her shins. Most people should be right at knee height or shin height. What we're trying to accomplish with the sumo rack pull is we're introducing a little bit more range of motion than the RDL, but we're working on keeping that back as vertical as possible. Okay? This is going to limit the amount of shearing force that your client or athlete has or yourself, and gradually introduce that shearing force and range of motion as we go down the progression. So what I'm going to have her do is sit her hips down, chest out, try to squat into it as much as possible, arch the low back, and then squeeze up, and then back down. So a common mistake people make with these is they let the bar drift out in front of them. Notice how she slides the bar up her thighs as she goes, and then sits it back and right. And that's the sumo. All right, the next step in the progression is going to be the conventional deadlift out of the rack at 18 inches. So what we do is we set our bar height at 18 inches, which for most people is either right at the knees or right below. So what Kristen's going to do is go ahead and approach the bar, make sure the bar is in contact with the knees or shins. Then she's going to hip hinge down and watch as she maintains that neutral spine. One hand goes under, she's going to put her hands just outside of her knees, keep that bar in tight, and then she's going to squeeze her glutes, stand up all the way, and then back down. One thing you want to be really careful with in this one is that A, they don't round their lumbar spine, and then B, they don't let the bar travel out too far away from you. You still want to keep the bar in tight and keep it sliding against your thighs the whole time. Okay, the next step in the progression is still a conventional rack pull, but she's going to be standing on small bumpers. So we're basically working on increasing the range of motion a little bit. So again, bar in tight to the shins, hinge the hips on the way down, don't fold over at the spine, squeeze the weight off of the bar, keep the bar in tight, don't let it drift out. So keep the bar in nice and tight, don't let it drift out, and then back down. So our next step in the progression is still we're working in the rack on the rack deadlift. Now we're just standing on higher bumpers. Some squat racks have lower holes in the sides of them where you can lower the bar down. Ours don't, so we use bumpers. Either one works. So now what we're doing is we're working on pulling from about 15 inches. So what I'm going to have Kristen do is go ahead and roll the bar into her shins. She's going to hip hinge to get down to the bar. Remember, you want to keep that nice neutral spine, chin tucked, squeeze the glutes, stand up tall, and then back down. And now we're just working on adding range of motion. All right, the next step in our progression is to actually pull from the floor, but we're not going to go right to a conventional stance to pull from the floor. We're going to start off with a sumo stance. All right, from our sumo stance, I'm going to have Kristen go ahead and approach the bar. Again, the feet are a little bit wider than shoulder width, and her toes are slightly pointed out. From there, she's going to hinge her hips back, pull that bar in tight, and then really work on sitting down and getting as vertical as she can. So go ahead and squat down into it, and then you're going to squeeze the bar off the floor, and then back down. Good. Again, maintain a neutral spine, squeeze the glutes to the top, and then back down. Good. And that's sumo deadlift. All right, the next step in our progression is the conventional deadlift from the floor. Obviously, this is at the end of the progression. Whether your athlete or adult client gets there or not is going to be up to them and their ability level. Some of our athletes do, some of our clients can get there, some of them can't. But anyways, this is the end of the progression. So I'm going to go ahead and have Kristen approach the bar. She's going to hinge her hips to get down. Keep that spine nice and neutral. One hand over the top, one hand underneath. Chin tucked, and squeeze the bar off the ground, up to lockout, and then back down. Good. Again, sit the hips down. We want the shins nice and vertical. Good. And that's the conventional